All right, good evening and welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to go over our weekly live video for Section 8 news and major updates for all the news that we've gone over the previous week, as well as some of the new changes we're expecting. Before I get started, my name is Jay. I'm the owner of Section8Consulting.com, and I'll be presenting several different case scenarios this month. And also, I decided to invite my secretary. She's on the back of the chair there, popping around. But besides Miss Diamond, we're going to talk a little bit about the potential for some changes in HUD funding. And so Congress is considering a temporary funding extension, and this is to prevent another blockade essentially for funding. And so it looks like they were going to vote in October 1st, but that's been changed and pushed back to about November, and maybe a little bit longer because of shortfalls and disagreement on both party lines. So let me bring up some of the news here where I can better see it and kind of report it. But Congress is working on a continuing resolution that would temporarily fund HUD and other federal agencies, possibly until after the November elections. And I think those are midterms because the Senate appropriation negotiations remain stalled. So, it was a rather contentious subject because we were looking at October and now that's been moved out. And so, a continuing resolution would generally keep programs operating temporarily at existing funding levels, but it would not represent the final approval of the FY 2027 HUD budget. Why it matters? Well, housing authorities needed predictable funding for voucher payments and administrative expenses for public housing operations and homeless programs. And you can take a look at that at the NLHC congressional update I'll be posting for you guys. Moving on from there, I'm going to throw in a bit of personal news. I don't know how you guys are doing out there across the U.S., but it's pretty damn hot. I know we've got temperatures around 100 and with the heat index around 111, 115. So it feels like a frying pan. And I'm sure the energy company's loving that. So next up is going to be proposal cuts overall for funding. So the House Appropriations Committee approved a proposal for providing approximately 71 billion for HUD. So they're taking an 8% reduction over previous funding, and that's pretty typical. I think we've seen a 20% reduction over the past 2 years in total, and so this remains the proposal, but it must pass Congress, become law before HUD programs potentially see the consequences. Scratch my eye real quick because something's got in there, probably my cat. All right. So the potential consequences include increased financial pressure on housing authorities, fewer vouchers, reduced public housing repair funding, and greater difficulty renewing all rental assistance contracts. Possible limitations on voucher leasing and portability, rent increases, and payment standards. So about the same as it's always been. And for that, I'll publish the House proposal for HUD funding analysis for you guys. And this will all come as notes in the description. Also, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is now federal law. That was a very popular video, by the way. About 25,000 people visited that video. So I'm quite pleased with the reaction, but I'm not all that happy about it, what it entails. But it increases housing and construction, reduces regulatory barriers, modernizing certain HUD programs, expanding manufactured housing opportunities, improving community bank housing lending, and addressing large institutional investors from ever really buying single family homes. But an important clarification for this is the law does not automatically impose Section 8 work requirements or 2 year time limits or nationwide voucher terminations just yet. The issues are being considered through a separate HUD rulemaking and budget proposal, which is presently in the House Financial Services Committee uh, announcement that they published. And I'll publish that as well here for you guys. And so on number four, HUD working requirements and time limits also remain proposed, as I mentioned. So those requirements up to 40 hours a week for work eligible adults that are not disabled or 62 and older. Time limits on certain federal rental assistance benefits, meaning vouchers, and then local exemptions and hardship policies. These requirements are currently nationwide. Section 8 rules, and the housing authorities cannot simply claim that every voucher is now subject to a federal 2 year limit. So it's for qualifying PHAs that meet all regulatory requirements and or not in trouble or otherwise under investigation. I think the biggest announcement we're going to be talking about is the emergency housing voucher transition remains pretty urgent. Emergency housing voucher funding continues to be a major concern as programs approach exhaustion of its final funding. Congress provided approximately $600 million in tenant protection vouchers in 2026 and authorized PHAs to use some of those vouchers to transition EHV households. However, the transition is not automatically guaranteed for every household. So if you have an EHV, you may find yourself on the street. And so we're seeing an exceptional eviction rate at this point nationwide. In fact, I know in my own city, around they have filed approximately 75,000 or more evictions in the past month, and that number doesn't seem to be slowing down. In places like California, New York, and other states, you should expect those numbers to be rather large. So, rather large tidal waves of evictions. Congress provided another in the transition to not automatically guarantee every household. Implementation depends on HUD funding at local PHA levels, and EHB participants should not assume their vouchers have already converted to regular HCV. Participants should request their program status and a transition plan. In other words, you need to start figuring this out now because this is all going to come to a head at the end of the year as the last little bit of change in that program is gone and they're not going to re-up that. Okay. And you can also look at this through the final 2026 HUD funding analysis that, again, I'll be including. Moving on from there, we talked earlier this week about the Virgin Islands and the $1.8 billion fraud. They paired HUD funding. They gave 1.8 billion to a housing authority to stimulate both housing as well as deal with the tropical or hurricanes and storms out there. It turns out that turned out to be that they pretty much stole most of the money, and it's been a very large issue. Now the whole housing authority has been taken under receivership, taken over by federal control, and there are now levying indictments. And so we expect some people start landing in a New York courtroom, federal courtroom, pretty soon to answer those charges. They've also indicted the director of that program. So it's, in my opinion, the largest Section 8 scam in U.S. history. But from there, another contentious subject is going to be the immigration status for housing rule remains under consideration. Look, the administration has made themselves very clear. If you don't have a legal right to be in the country, you will not participate in any federal program or otherwise home ownership or any other program that is federally funded. Though the subject matter remains contentious, they're also looking at mixed use vouchers where you may have legal and illegal members, and they're rejecting all people that can't prove citizenship throughout the I guess the rest of the administration at this point. Moving on, but they've also been major changes. The HOTMA, HOTMA implementation continues to create confusion. That's because they wrote that so quickly that I don't think a lot of people have had time to adjust to it. Housing authorities and property owners continue to prepare for delay HOTMA income and asset provisions, which means a lot of you that are looking at your assets and incomes, the rules have changed and they're going to continue to change. And full implementation will arrive January 1st of 2027. And so, with that, new income calculation rules, asset limitations, treatment of retirement accounts and property, self certification, and certain assets, and interim and annual reinspection procedures. In other words, you could end up actually paying more rent than you've ever paid before if these HOTMA if they implement the new rules for that. So we're only going to know the full effect of that starting January 1st. I did publish a video on that. If you want to take a look at that, we went down a detailed guide for that. Now that I've gone through the major things here, one thing I'm going to tell you guys, it's we're it seems like we have a government shutdown quite frequently these days. I don't know if we're having struggles as a country paying for things, but we had an October date and they got pushed out. Of course, that's probably a good circumstance for many of you because nobody's looking really to see the ending result of work requirements and time limits for those that participate. And I know that remains an ambiguous topic, but it's going to have to happen, and it's going to have to happen likely before January 1st, 2027. So I would say this is a stay of execution of that. And I think previous changes are already being looked at. Many of you should realize that um, I think it was the moving to work program is a very watered down version of what's being presented as something new at this point, and that's called work requirements and time limits. And so, since the administration already has a consensus that, you know, um, that this may not be passed by Congress, they're probably going to backdoor it, look at moving to work program as a model that's already been approved, and then remodel this to closely match that so they can slide it through Congress. If that happens that way, then you may see an escalated move to work option, but it's really going to be time limits and work requirements, which can be quite appropriate considering this will eliminate roughly half of all voucher holders over probably a 2 to 4 year period, and that will free up a lot of waiting lists. But it's going to present newer challenges out there. And as many of you know, earlier this year they terminated homeless funding nationwide. It's been argued in many of the courts, all the way up to state supreme courts. And so, as we look at that as a relevant topic, even LA, they got their funding got completely removed. Period. They didn't even wait for the clock to stop, and the administration demanded that they cut the funding there. So a lot of rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and emergency housing vouchers will remain a very frosty topic going into the future. I think I've seen an uptick even at my office. A lot of people have been contacting me that participate or utilize HMIS system, which is a homeless management information system, and other organizations trying to figure out what to do. Because the reality of it is, if the line of funding remains closed too long, then what will end up happening is a systematic failure of nonprofits around the country. And I think that's, in some cases, we need to get rid of some of these nonprofits because they're not serving the people. But once this infrastructure kind of collapses, then it's going to be really, really hard to relight and rebuild this, which means it'll only marginally be a fraction of what it used to be, no matter who's the president. Okay. So moving them there, these are difficult times, and so this is the type of adversity that the country deals with. We also have wars going on and different things at great cost. I would say that just the issues related to Iran by itself is the entire HUD budget, except spent in a couple of months. So money comes and goes quickly, and we're now seeing government shutdowns. It seems like twice a year. I think as a nation we need to consider reducing part of our war budget, or at least figuring out something different there. But I'm not an economist. I'm not a 4 star or 5 star general, so I'm not going to make war recommendations in this channel. I'm just suggesting that maybe America's living beyond its means when a lot of people can't afford gas, things like that. So that's just my sole opinion here. Let me take a look, see if I got anything else interesting. Then I'm going to address some comments here because I'm sure you guys have a lot of things to say. One thing I'm going to tell you is, guys, last week after that other video, one thing I want to warn you guys of, I have a regular audience base for this channel, and a rather large one at that. As my videos gain a lot more popularity this year, more than they ever have, and I've been doing this for a very long time, 15 years, since YouTube is showing the videos to a wider audience, we're seeing an uptick in trolling. Okay, these are people that for the first time experience these videos, and they may not objectively agree with the topic. So please have patience. I've had to remove 8 or 9 people in terms of that. We can argue the point, but it's never a wise decision to argue each other or to defame anybody in the channel. So my office will take a very strict position with that, and I will remove actors. I'm not going to offend anybody's freedom of speech, but if it's going to devolve to name calling and craziness, then I'm going to remove that. And that's part of the problem with growth on YouTube. You start reaching an audience that may not have the highest appreciation for your content. And therefore, they get on mommy's flip phone and start talking shit on my channel. So I'm going to address that very directly because that's the man that I am. Moving on there, I'm going to tell you a quick personal story, and then we're going to jump into comments. So, in all of my clever thoughts, I went and bought a dog gate. I have a bunch of cats, and sometimes they like to pee and boo boo on the floor. So, especially one of my cats. So I get it. I spent $65 to get this dog gate, set it up in specific areas and pieces, right? Thinking I've solved the problem. So this morning, in all my fame and glory, I get the gate out. I'm quite pleased with myself, about to sit down and do this video. I watch one cat shoot between the bars, and so it decompressed me when I saw that. But what really injured me was the fact that I watched my next cat simply jump right over, and then I lost all grip of fucking reality after that because I thought I had a solution, but clearly I'm not the smartest person in the room because my catch just defeated the whole damn thing, and I just flushed $65 down the toilet. I call that a hardship. Anyways, let's go on to comments here and see who's got something to say. Good morning, Muscogee Land. Good morning, Bella Cruz. Good morning, Sheila Neal. Thank you for coming back. Christy Crow, thank you for the smile emoji. Heather Bright, thank you for the retracted message. You got to talk pleasantly for YouTube, or it'll remove your comment. YouTube 1970, greetings and thank you, Jay. You're most welcome. Deborah Galvin, my local Section 8 office has been closed for years trying to get out of public housing that do not make repairs, and I have black mold in my unit. Thank you for writing a comment that's actually legible. You know how many people jump in here and write gibberish, and then I'm trying to read that comment, and it lacks everything, spelling, grammar, and so I'm left tongue tied by the time I repeat the comment. So thank you for a well curated comment. Moving on from there, Heather Bright. I hope you and the cats are able to stay cool. Yeah, well, look, my cats aren't crazy. When it reaches a heat index around 111, 115, even they're not crazy enough to sit on the patio and bake. They've been snuggled up in the house. Some of them sleeping near the air conditioning vents, because it's even my AC's not keeping up. I've got it set, and we start losing territory around 12 or 11 or 12 in the morning. The AC can't even keep up with it. And I went out there and washed it, with a hose to keep all the coils clean and properly functioning. But when you're at these temperatures, unless you got a lot of money and a big AC system, you're not going to be able to keep up with this shit. So we're holding at 76 degrees right now, and that's the best we can do with the unit running nonstop. Moving on from there, Rachel, child of God, good morning and welcome to the channel. Thank you for the emojis. Pika, morning, Jay and Cat and company. Of course, cats always come with the company. We can't do anything. This channel, let me tell you something, guys. Another interesting story. Long time ago, when I first started making videos and talking about this content for you guys, one of the most curious things happened. One of my cats jumped in the video, and of course, I had a wonderful spike in viewership. It took a while, but I connected two things. Cats equals more viewers, right? I don't train the cats; they're not lions, right? But you guys certainly do have an appreciation for the Kikis, and we talk about them a lot. They've become a staple of the company. So, imminent possibility. Good morning, Jay and Kiki's and chat. Well, thank you very much, Deborah Gavin. When there are no jobs, kind of a hardship jump through the hoops, of course. That brings up another topic. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I posted a picture on our community page. So President Trump showed up for a uh, meeting with all the news reporters, and he slapped on a red hat that said Trump 2028. And if you look on President Trump's GIF website, right, he's got a 2028 hat for reelection. Now, most presidents, I would take that as a casual joke, but I'm not sure, man. So, what are your thoughts on that? I posted some information about that. Um, I'm not sure. This is the one guy that you never really know. So, what does that really mean? Is there going to be problems in 2028? But according to news reports, it was supposed to be because of the April Fools for the audience or the media that was present. But I've seen President Trump joke about things before, and it became reality very quick. And so, like I said, if it was any other president, I would just blow it off fleetingly. But with him, it's a double take. Okay, okay, what message are we sending? And the joke didn't stop at the hat. I mean, he has it in the gift shop in the White House. So I'm just like, okay, well, what's going to go down here? We know very clearly he doesn't have a great appreciation of federal programs and housing, obviously, but he doesn't like it that much for a lot of reasons. But another a fourth term, I'm unsure, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Pre-cal 10, happy hot fudge Sunday. Well, I'm not having anything hot. Matter of fact, I went down to Whataburger this morning. It's a burger shop we have in Texas. I go occasionally go get a iced coffee in the morning. They told me we're out, and they give me some bubbling hot coffee. I told them keep that shit. I can make that at home. If I wanted bubbling hot coffee to go with my bubbling hot day, I would go ahead and why would I drive there for bubbling hot coffee? They like to maybe see my day's already off to a bad start with that between the cats and the cat gate. So, anyways, moving on there, Pandora Flakes. I love that name. So I'm so glad the inspection process is sped up. Let's hope so. I mean, it's going to allow some opportunities, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be universal across the country. If you're utilizing your voucher and you have a request for tenancy and you're dealing with a landlord, the good news is in most cases, if they've had a approved property before, then it'd be a self-certification and it can even be done before you even rent if a landlord, larger landlords are proactive. I don't see this being as effective for private landlords because I don't see why they'd want to engage materially that early, a month before you even have a tenant, let's have an inspection. So but it may be the wisest way to do business to speed up the need and demand for housing. Millie Vincity, good day and thank you for the info. You're most welcome. Glad to have you in the channel. Too genuine. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to you, Deborah. Looks like Deborah Dump Dump is Delusia. I don't really know what that means. If you're trying to insult me or say something terrible, please make it clear. Okay, I like my insults straight up. No ice, no mixer. I'm just joking. All right, Tujin goes on. He's really on borrowed time. Well, I mean, some people might share that sentiment. A lot of people have a lot of sentiments here. One good thing about the channel is no matter who's got a voucher, I can guarantee you it's split evenly between Republicans and Democrats and independents. It goes across both party lines. There are both Democrats, Republicans, and independents using vouchers. Okay, so it's a good time to talk about it anytime. Deborah goes, dog walks to go for a walk now. We'll replay later. Okay, well, hey, it's just like a VCR. You can rewind anytime you wish. So, well, guys, I think that kind of covers things. So we got to stay of execution in terms of the vote for October 1st. So that will create further delays, and so it'll be pushed all the way to the end of the year because Congress is busy vacationing in the Bahamas. Right? Let's hope they don't go to the Virgin Islands because uh, that would be a big issue when it's considering that $2 billion got itself lost at the housing authority. Maybe our congressmen and can go visit that housing authority and do some repo. Right? We don't like a refund the taxpayers in the country. So if you're a congressman listening to this video, please do vacation in the Virgin Islands while you decide the budget and go visit your local housing authority that stole 2 billion because most Americans would like a refund. Moving on from there, Muscogee Land. Does it really matter what state you move to? It always matters. I mean, look, there are states where it's more difficult. There are states and counties where it's easier to do things. So yes, I mean, when you think of housing and federal programs and vouchers, it really does matter because every PHA or public housing authority in America operates a little bit differently. They only use federal rules as a broad stroke in their ideal how they do their policies and procedures. Once they file those administrative plans, you see something very different from every PHA. 26 years of work at the federal level myself, I can tell you, working with clients over 20,000, we have dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of housing authorities. Look, how you deal with each one is very different. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, okay, but there can also be very contrasting issues in the way they do things, and that really gets right quite colorful when you get to real large metropolitan cities like L.A., New York, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and so on. So that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap this video up. I think we've covered everything we need to talk about. I'm going to go look online and see if I can find some chicken wires and just staple it. I guess I'll just hammer some fucking chicken wire in my house to keep my cats from boo-booing everywhere. I want to remind you guys, I don't need a cat box. I have a cat door on both doors, but I have cats that are so lazy they cannot be bothered to walk through the cat hole out the door to use the lawn. So we digress into chicken wire and staple guns in my house because I can't figure out any other way to stop them from boo booing where they love the most. And it's usually under my office chairs, right? So it's nothing like, getting up 6 in the morning and you do a banana split on a wet one on the floor right before you make a video, right? And, boy, we just love that game. Or you got a nice pool of and so really this has become a humanitarian crisis for me because I'm getting tired of making videos smelling boo boo. You guys get to see the better half of this deal. If I pointed the camera down on most days, we'd all be in trouble. But then again, this video is not about cats and boo boo, is it? It's rather government boo boo, and whether or not you're going to be able to keep your housing, whether we're going to have two nickels to rub together for the budget, and whether everybody's going to be living in the magic forest. So my financial advice to you guys: invest in tent companies and RV companies, because that might be the future of housing. Because it doesn't seem that anybody other than the upper middle class and the wealthy can afford anything. But if I'm wrong about that, please do correct me. All right, guys. That being said, I'm going to close this up. We do live videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. The rest of the videos are educational throughout the week. There's usually two a day until I get tired of it. Every day of the week, and we cover this year we're covering over 2,000 different videos. Some of them are very niche, and that's to cover all known topics. I'm hoping to give a better representation of information for Google and AI out there, so you guys can start addressing issues. These are not all topics that are going to generate large audience. I'm not that kind of channel. I don't just publish things that are popular. I also publish extremely niche formats for questions and comments, to help people, because we need to answer all the questions, not just the ones that are popular and will make you money and all that good stuff on YouTube. So, what we're doing is a 2,000 video library to cover every contentious subject matter under policy, procedure, federal programs, housing, and so on, even if it only generates 200 views. That way, we've got fresh content that Google and again AI can pick up, and so people can get an accurate answer versus it gobbling up the garbage the news spews. And so that's always a big issue. We need better and fresh content. So after doing this quarter of a century, I believe that I'm a very inaccurate representation of that. I know I've made over 2,000 videos, but the interesting thing about YouTube is every so many years, they'll wipe out hundreds of my videos, because if it doesn't make YouTube enough money, they don't want it. And so I think I'm down to almost 700 videos, despite having published in total 2,000 over what, 16 years now. And so I have to keep pouring more in order to keep the topic relevant. All right, guys, enjoy your morning. We'll see you again this afternoon for an EDU or educational video. I don't know what the subject matter will be. And then, of course, we'll see you for another live, I believe, Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Central. All right, bye for now.